So can I ask then, back to the reason I invited you, but I think it was important actually do that journey looking back, because I want to ask, therefore, if you were in a position to be someone's creative director and they come to you and at first they say, so what we need, James, is a promo video. And you listen very, very politely and say, sure, but have you thought of ... What are the things that you've been producing for the last, let's say, 10 years that have really challenged somebody? It's been quite creative or quite daring, but actually it's had high impact with the audience. Can you help us think beyond the promo video? What has been working well?
Well, I think I'll actually reference a job because I created Rainbow Trout Films while working for Sky, so they were my first major client, as it were. And so through that, one of the projects we were doing was I was given a brief, and it was Sky and WWF, World Wildlife Foundation, were doing a Adopt a Jaguar campaign. And they had a video that was made up of archive clips. And I said, well, this needs refreshing. They were doing a lot of big things with the rainforest rescue. So they were doing a whole massive campaign with this. And so I got tasked with the job saying, well, can you just find some other clips and just make this work? And I went out there and I looked in the archive houses and things like that. You've already used the best stuff that there was. This isn't going to work. And so I challenged, I thought outside the box. Well, I thought, A, they're not going to send me to Brazil or one of the to the rainforest to film some jaguars. But then I was thinking, right, okay, well, that rules out that. But maybe there's a zoo that has some value with an outdoor space or something. So I came up, basically, I went back to my bosses and went, guys, look, this. But then I came back and gave them a whole new concept, going, well, there's some jaguars here and we used Chester Zoo and some beautiful jaguars there. And I said, well, we can film, go up there, just do a day's filming, get some nice shots with them, and put together a whole new concept around that, which was completely outside the brief I'd been given. And upshot it was, they went for it. So we went over to Chester Zoo, and obviously with animals, you never know when they're going to do their thing. But obviously there was a great viewing bit which was outside, and so obviously we were filming on long lenses and things, and luckily the jaguars came out, and it was an autumnal day, so you got this lovely breath coming out of the mouths and things, and they just came down, plodding down, and we just got in tight shots and things, and so it just gave this whole thing of that you wouldn't know they were in a zoo. So the shots and things that we created from that was just magical. So I had a whole prep, and then, right, we can put this into this 60-second commercial and just blow anything else out of the water. And I remember at the time when they did the big launch, I was down at Westfield because they were doing another program around the rainforest. They'd set up a rainforest in the Westfield shopping arcade in West London. So we were doing a big launch thing for there, and the videos were showing on the big screens around the shopping centre. So I was like, that's my work. And the report back came from the charity and from the higher ups at Sky that their uplift was like it was down there, and it just shot through the roof. So I know that one campaign had a huge impact for that charity and that project. And I think that was one of my proud jobs that I was really happy to work on. And of course, it went through many iterations as these things do. But yeah, it was really quite special.
Do you have, in your head a bit of a checklist that makes story and visual storytelling work better? Do you have something where you could even, educate a client, or you could say, listen, I hear what you're trying to achieve here, but actually there are some gaps in your thinking. If we add the following, that's going to work much better for the audience. Do you have, a bit of a checklist like that?
Well, I think it comes down to trying to get a bit of personality out of the product or the person, or as you say, how the story is being told, and not just think of it as, I just want this video to do this, but it's like, it's very important. What are the goals of that video? Because I always will have that discussion about the whole strategy behind it. It's like, what do you want this video to achieve? And obviously say, well, you can do it like that, but also you can do it like this. And then you can do it like this, and then you can offshoot that onto your social media platforms. And so it's no longer, as you say, it's a one video and that's it. Quite often, yes, you have your one core video, but then you'll have many, many different offshoots. And especially in the wonderful world of social media that we live in now, it's like, well, you take a little bit of content and that's perfect for Instagram. You do a vertical video for that. You do a different one for LinkedIn. You do something else for Twitter. You do something for Facebook. And you bring all the different elements in. So what I say is, yes, you create the one video, but actually you might end up creating 20 or even 30 or more different bits of content, which then I say, then you create your sort of you'll have this digital asset library, which you can then come back to, reuse, revisit later down the line. So you're not always having to start from scratch every time somebody decides, oh, I think we should have a video. So that's something I really would talk to clients about. So yes, we've only got the budget for this one video. And then it's like, yeah, but then I will give you 30 videos or something, but with a plan. There's no point. And I've done this for other clients in the past where we've done it. We've produced a beautiful video. There you go. And then our job is done. And they just do quite often nothing.
Yeah, and I think
you're
it's
lucky if
interesting.
they put them on YouTube, for instance.
Yeah.
Come on. So I think that's what I spend more time looking at that strategy element now than I did, say, even 2 years ago.
Oh, I'm not surprised. I mean, as you know, that's really why I pulled away from video production to talk about. I became a video marketing consultant because I was actually concerned about distribution. But you're right. The kind of conversation we're having now compared to a few years ago, they're almost the kind of conversation that you had when you were working on feature films and short film, which is get it distributed. What are going to be the channels? Are going to go small screen, big screen, VHS cassettes, or DVDs, and so on. And we're having those conversations now and having to adapt the format, because films on TV were very different to the big screen, and so on and so forth. But you're right, is also now people having to really manage their database of digital assets. And I find myself now talking to customers a lot more about, well, what have you got? And often, and that's only because it's a newer kind of concern, they don't know where the video footage is, or they're not sure where it's been saved, or which kind of hard drive it's been kept on. But you've got to have that kind of catalog, your portfolio of things. In terms of the kinds of videos, again, I'm trying to get to that, that a business should consider beyond, the obvious ones. Are there some form of videos and stories that may feel actually at a step with being in business, but actually could be very engaging for an audience? I'm thinking maybe, is it appropriate for a business to do a documentary, for example? Is it appropriate for them to do a historical film about maybe their industry or the business they're in? Is it appropriate for them to interview future thinkers? I'm looking at ways in which their content marketing can become much richer.
No, absolutely, because there are many different ways to market things without having it. This is a promo video, but no, actually, we can do a documentary about this, or having a fun element, something that helps engage the audience. And there's a famous one, which I'm sure you've come across. I think it's a Dollar Saver Club video, which is, it's absolutely, totally tongue-in-cheek, cheap in some ways, but expensive in others. But the thought that's gone behind that process, which then once you see it, looks so natural, but the work that went into that is massive. But the effect is huge because it's fun, it's engaging, and it's outside the box. It's outside the box thinking. Going, well, we could do something that's really good and fun here, rather than just saying, let's do the serious, because the serious video has its place. And as I always say to people, well, there's so much you can do with your mobile phone, and that has a certain audience to a point, and you go, and then there's another point where you go, right, that audience has that expectation. And it depends where your product line or your story or what you're trying to get across fits. So it's a sliding scale, and it's just trying to give the clients the best possible options and going, have you thought about this? Because as I say, the wonderful world of documentary, which I'm sure you might be segueing into my documentary, I suspect. I was working with many big airlines around the world. So, yeah.
So when you work on a project with a client, which will be obviously, in the business world, should I say, they are not from entertainment. What steps do you go through from start to finish? I mean, do you still apply, some of the rules and some of the techniques from the world of fiction, from, script to screen, or do you miss some steps? Have you got a bit of a method that you take people through?
A lot of it depends on the product and quite often as well the budget for said product, what we can and cannot achieve. I always like to give some more interesting options, and as you say, to have the story element come in, I always think it's so much more engaging. And if you're following somebody's story through a process, it's much more interesting than just seeing a bunch of clips thrown together, for instance. And that could be the story of a package going through a factory, but it's that package. It's just thinking of those different ways of bringing something to life. And I always think the more effective videos are the ones that connect with people emotionally. If you can connect with people on an emotional level, whatever that might be, and as we say in the marketing world, we're always waiting for what's this year's John Lewis advert going to be, or the Sainsbury's. There's this big competition every year of who can make everybody cry the most. And I think it comes down to that. It's having that emotional connection and being in the moment, I think is.
Yeah. And, you remind me of something that I share with my customers when I play my role as the video marketing consultant, where I said to them, no one, there's no requirement for you to be in front of the camera to tell the story. I think that's sometimes what gets in the way of people being ambitious about their project, or because they think, well, because I'm the business owner, or because suddenly I'm the public facing kind of figure of the business, I'm going to have to be the one to essentially be the story. And suddenly a lot of stuff gets in the way of that. Where I say, well, not really. In your example, let's follow the package. And make and almost kind of make that the thread through, and I think that if people were to think in that way, they may actually free themselves up from those tensions and anxieties about being in front of the camera, and then discover some very clever way, some very clever hooks to tell the story.
Yeah.
That said, on occasion, it is the right thing to do to be in front of the camera. And I know that you have mountains of experience in making people feel comfortable, as comfortable as you would want them to be on set. So any tricks you're happy to share today about what you would do to make me, for example, comfortable in being the storyteller of sort for the video?
Well, I think preparation is key, and being able to breathe, being able to relax, keep hydrated with tea or water, and just don't be too scripted. I think is number one, and I've fallen foul of it myself when I've tried to do things in the past where I've gone, I have to say it just like this, and because of that, I get stuck. So I think whenever I'm talking to a client about, right, you need to talk about this product or this service, I say, just have some simple bullet points and then put it in your own words. Make it as conversational as though you're talking to your friend, your colleague, your mate, just so then that person comes alive in their personality. And I've done it where we've had the auto cue going and they're just reading off a pre-approved script by all the different departments. And but the person is can be quite lifeless because of that, because it's like, well, you're not really giving me anything of who you are. And so I always try and encourage them, just take the elements. We just take this section. The wonderful world of video is we can cut it, we can snip it, we can bring things back. It doesn't have to be perfect in one take. This isn't a live broadcast in that sense.
Well, what I have done, which I'm sure you've done the same trick, sometime I allow somebody to come up with the script and do that. And then maybe later on search, shall we do it again with no script, see how that goes? And usually even they are happier because they've understood more about how it all works. Is it personal preference? I mean, do you have personal preference? Would you rather someone to be sitting down, standing up halfway through on the kind of bistro style stool, or is it not? Because the breathing is important. I'm discovering this all the time. So for example, I've done, as you can imagine, my fair share of video interviews. And you and I are sitting down because, of course, it's convenient. But I do find that it's affecting my breathing quite a bit if I want to project and kind of present.
Yeah. So if I'm like this, I'm slouched. My diaphragm is crunched. I can't breathe properly, so I can't project. So I always try and engage it. I personally quite like it when people are standing, because then they have the freedom to move their arms. We get some more body language coming through. But again, it comes down to what it is you're doing. Because if you're in, say, an interview situation, and sorry, some just walked past, then sometimes it's better to be sat in some seats and going through that sort of thing. So but personally, I think standing is better, just because you've got much more freedom to be creative through that. So
yeah. And would you, part of obviously the pre-production stage, would you talk to them about obviously what they might wear, how they might obviously, so I think where people need to be a little kinder to themselves is, James, know that the bit before we press record, which we're going to call pre-production, can sometimes be just as long, if not longer, than the production itself. So if you're going to be filming for a day, there will be days of planning and discussion with the client. And I think sometimes business owners, managers, and marketing teams should allow that. They'll find that the day of filming is going to be a lot easier and enjoyable all around.
Yeah, totally. You've got to have that freedom, and it's all about planning ahead, because that's your precious time. That's the time you as a client, you're paying for that filming time. So you want to maximize the best you can out of the period of time you're doing that.
And it also saves time and money in post-production, not having to try and remedy for things that we wish we'd thought, but that's for another time. I still have memories of me crying at the editing stage when I forgot something, or we just things didn't go according to plan. So let me do my bit as the video marketing consultant and give you a bit of potted history, and that will give me a segue to your documentary currently available on Prime Video. So we went through this kind of evolution where making videos for business was difficult and costly, because of technology. Then technology became readily available via mobile phones. And we went to the other extreme, which I'm going to say we're going to call vlogging. So on one hand, you had what businesses wanted to achieve to come across as, credible and trustworthy. And then the other, you had vlogging, which is the other extreme of big in conversation, no kind of styles, no fanfare and so on. And I think we're going to essentially balance this out where we're going to have something in between, conversational, yet, high production value. And I think businesses are going to go towards that, and they're going to start to make their own documentaries, which I know sounds kind of very grand and very kind of, again, out of step of being in business. But that's part of content marketing, to see a very human side of the business by being away from the corporate style of making videos. So you here today to let us know about what's coming around the corner for most businesses to be essentially commissioning or becoming themselves documentary makers. You made a 6-part documentary. Tell us more about it. So firstly, what's the title and how did you come up with the idea?
So it's called The In-Flight Food Trip. And so the idea, it was a guy came to me with an idea, said, I want to do this documentary about airline food. And he was, that's what he did as his sort of hobby. He worked in the airline industries, helping airline efficiencies. But his sideline was he would always go and photograph all these different meals on the different airlines. And so he had this quite a fascinating story, and he had this idea of doing covering all these different airlines. And I thought, there's something here. It's a very niche subject, but then it has quite it's a safe subject, shall we say. It can travel the world. And in fact, we did travel the world. So, but the interesting thing is we crowdfunded for it. So we
Right.
reached out and did a whole crowdfunding campaign to raise the money to sort of cover the production costs, getting to and from places, and wheeling and dealing with various airlines and things, going, well, we can get that and we do this and we do that exchange for that. And so it sort of all came over 2 or 3 years. So it wasn't just do this project, there's the money, off you go. It wasn't that sort of a project. So we had to do it piecemeal at a time. But what a great experience we got to work with so many different airlines and brands connected with the aviation industry. That we traveled literally all around the world. So I think the first place we went to was Riga with Air Baltic. They were sort of one of the first airlines to come on board the project. But from there, we literally traveled the world. We were Turkish Airlines, Scandinavian Airlines. We went to Tokyo with Scandinavian Airlines, looking at, for instance, how they plan their meals 12 months in advance for just one route. And they'll have their head chef going out there working with the local caterers to come up with the meal combinations that work for that flight. So we want to touch the Scandinavian with the crisp cream, but with the Oriental of Japan. And it was just working on all these combinations. We went to China with China Southern Airlines, which then we led on into New York. We did a food tasting event in downtown Manhattan, which was a lot of fun with China Southern. And so it was all these different marketing things and brands coming together. So all that marketing knowledge played well in the making of this, because it's like you bring something together with lots of different brands, lots of different airlines, and it's been a tough, but it's been a great experience. And as you say, it then gives that an outlet. It's currently on Amazon Prime Video and other online platforms that are available. There's quite a few in the US where you can access it as well. And that's evolving. But once you've got the content made, it's there and you can repurpose it. I'm looking at maybe doing a feature-length version as well as smaller chunks as well. So it does have a life cycle, obviously, but in this world now where people dream of flying. And I think even, was it Taiwan Airlines? They actually did a flight to nowhere.
That's great. Yeah, they're starting to do that.
Where
Yeah.
people could get on the flight, go up, and did a loop, a few hundred miles around, and then came back and landed in exactly the same place. Because those people wanted the experience of flying, but without going anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
it's fascinating, people are doing. So could I ask, obviously it is known now, currently available as a 6-part documentary. As part of pre-production, did you know there was going to be 6 parts, or you had an idea it would be parts, but 6 was how it kind of ended up being?
initially, it was just going to be a feature doc.
Okay.
But as it was coming out, I saw it as that and a series. I thought this is going to work better as a series because it's bite size, as it were. You can take the different story elements from the different airlines and go on that journey with them. So it's nice, what I call bite size content. You've got like nice 10-minute about this story. So it's, as you say, it's telling that story within that period of time. And that to me just made more sense. And as we went through the post-production process, it just became more apparent that, no, this is the right way to go. And so it became the series. And I think it works very well as that, because people can just dip in and out of it without having to...
One could say they could snack on the content.
Yeah. Snack on the content.
So, when the airlines, did you have to pitch to the airline? Did you have to present the concept and then they had to go back to their masters and it was back and forth? Or was it quite swift, really?
Well, Nick, who's the other co-creator, he brought in the airline contacts because he had the contacts in the various airlines. And obviously I brought in the video and production expertise into it. So it was a good mix of a good marrying of the two bits of the two ends of the project. But even then we found that we were going to be filming with some airlines and then they dropped out for various reasons, or something wasn't just right in their marketing strategy. Oh no, we're not going to do that now. So it was a constant, isn't this happening? And then but the beautiful thing is when we made it happening, and it's like, you don't just jump on a plane to Tokyo every day. So you have to make sure everything is in place to make sure you get the most out of that time.
Is it too much to expect, for example, a local business, a marketing team to come up with a documentary, and for that documentary to be picked up by the likes of Amazon Prime or other channels? I mean, is it that accessible, I would say, as a result, or do you have to be a true professional filmmaker, would you say?
I think the barriers to entering into this world of content distribution are not there anymore. The old gatekeepers, the big TV channels are no longer there because of the internet, and because of now you can get your content on the Amazons of this world and the Hulus and the Netflix. There are new players in the game, and I think lockdown has brought that into the fore. We're always waiting for what's the new latest Netflix series or Amazon Prime series. That's our new way of consuming content, whereas before it was very much your BBCs, your ITVs, your Channel 4s. They're still there, but their audience is effectively getting smaller, while the online world is blooming. And you think how many times you watch TV now as opposed to pick up your phone or your iPad and consume something on YouTube or on anything. So the beautiful thing is now you can be your own studio, you can be your own distribution channel. Those barriers aren't there, but you do need to have the levels of quality, of broadcast quality, and the certain technical things you have to fulfill to make it happen.
So, you heard from James that, you can become your own studio. I shall remind you that this series is called the Content Marketing Studio for a reason, because I think, we are paving our way. and we are talking months, even just a handful of years before a marketing department actually becomes a studio or behaves and operate in a manner of a studio. So I'm just curious, I hope you don't mind, but the steps and the hoops you had to jump through for Amazon Prime and many others to agree to feature and list, your documentary series, was it quite onerous, or was it actually very logical because of your background?
Yeah, well, I used, there are other tools and other companies out there, and I was supporting another filmmaker who did a documentary on Flash Gordon called Life After Flash.
I saw
Uh,
it.
and
Right.
I helped their crowdfunder, and I was involved. I helped get
Wow.
them into do a thing in BAFTA and things. So they became sort of friends, really. We're all trying to make content because they had an Indiegogo campaign
Mm.
a little bit just before mine started. So it's all about collaboration and helping one another. So they were able to give me some great advice about how to distribute, and said, "Oh, have you thought about this particular platform?" So there are ways that we as filmmakers now can go. We can basically bypass the traditional route. So I used a third-party site, which then publishes my content on my behalf. They will take a cut of the fee,
Mhm.
but then it takes out having to go to every single individual platform or channel. I've just gone to one,
Sure.
and then that's out there in the marketplace, and then the channels can pick and go, "Oh yeah, we'll take that." So yeah, it's on Amazon.
It's
It's on,
fascinating because that you're describing essentially the behavior of a distribution company back in the 80s and 90s, but it's now an online platform.
yeah. So effectively, it is that. And so yeah, I'll log in and go, "Oh, what's it doing now?" And like going, yes, the revenue is not massive. I'm not going to even pretend anything. It's not. It's pence per hour watched on Amazon Prime, for instance. So you're not going to become a multimillionaire by doing this, but you are going to get your content out there to a much wider audience.
Yeah.
And one thing to think about there is make sure you've got your subtitles. You need to have your subtitles for certain channels. You might want to consider subtitles in different languages. You'll get a broader reach depending on what it is you're doing. So it might be appropriate to have it subdubbed, for instance, but again, every layer has a cost element to it. So it's not,
Mhm.
it's never cheap. So it's learning where, well, we can do that now. We might do that later. So we're always looking at how we can plan and repurpose the
I
content.
think that's a very important message. Thanks, James. This idea of going back. I think in the world of marketing, if I may suggest, that people move on very swiftly. They don't always go back to I call the vault, or back to what they did 6 months ago, and say, okay, how do we repurpose that? Do we make it square for Instagram? Do we go with subtitles for the German market, or whichever? And actually getting more value from your
Yeah.
existing content as opposed to always looking for the new things. And I get it. I'm guilty of moving on very fast and always looking for the next kind of creative idea and not always looking back. So remind us again of the name of the series.
So it's the In-Flight Food Trip. And
Okay.
if you're here in the UK, you can watch it on Amazon Prime Video. Just search In-Flight Food Trip, all one word.
So I've got one last question for you, James, and then we're going to
Yep.
close with a fun quiz, if you don't
Yep.
mind. So I just wanted to quickly ask you, at the time of recording this interview, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, the cinema industry as a whole is having a tough time. We just heard this week, how movies, blockbusters that actually are part of the supply chain for cinema chains and so on have been pushed till next year, some of them even 2022 and so on. I'm assuming you still have many contacts and friends in the industry. Do you remain positive about, the near future for film production and film viewing in general, or are you a little concerned?
To be honest, I'm very concerned. The whole movie watching experience is under huge threat now. I think we might not be ever, who knows, be able to go to the cinema in the same way again. Something that we both love and share. And I think from lockdown, I think the biggest thing I've missed is being able to go to the cinema, have that experience. That was date night perfection. You know, go have your Nando's and then go to go watch a film afterwards. I miss it terribly. But as the cinema chains have the problem, I think one of them, they said, well, with the grocery store with no groceries, because what they haven't got is the new movies to bring people back into the chains. What they should be looking at a little bit more is how they can creatively look at what back catalogue there is. For instance, as you speak on one of your other podcasts about getting the Lord of the Rings trilogy on, or doing some themed movie marathons, Star Trek, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, you name it, James Bond. People love to watch that again. So I think then at Cinema I'm going to have to get more creative.
Yeah.
With bringing audiences back, obviously safely, because as you say, we're heading into lockdown 2, the sequel to lockdown 1.
You're right. I think some, particularly the independent cinemas, have done that and done that very well. They have themed days, weekends, and so on, based quite sporadic. And I think maybe the chains, like, you know, well, the big names that have been in doing the headlines, maybe just a little wedded to their process of always having new titles on screen, and maybe they just need to reflect on that. And you're right, create an experience. There's so many anniversaries. I mean, you mentioned obviously Flash Gordon, who had their anniversary this year with the re-release in 4K. As you know, in my other podcast, Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast with Roger Edwards, we reviewed Flash Gordon, and we actually watched the documentary mentioned a moment ago as a refresher. So yeah, well, let's remain positive. And you're right, as you've done in your business, everybody has to adapt and adjust, their practices accordingly. This has been really so enjoyable. So let me close with a bit of a quiz, a bit of a quick fire questionnaire, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Monsieur James Mellor, if you were to have a Zoom call with a filmmaker, who would that be?
Ooh. You see, this is where you don't get pre-prepped for this. Steven Spielberg. It's got to be. It's got to be.
Fine really. Choice. If that happens, can I please just be with you in the same room and just even not on view?
I've not met Steven. I've met George Lucas though.
Oh, you did not. Oh.
Yeah. In Planet Hollywood, and it was at the time of Phantom. They were on production of Phantom Menace, so, and I had to go up to him and shake his hand. Had to do it and just say thank you very much for all your wonderful films.
I don't think I could have managed to even speak to the guy.
It took a lot of courage, believe you me.
Wow. Okay. It's your birthday soon, or have we just missed it?
A couple of weeks away. Just
a couple of weeks' time, right. So for your birthday, you are able to organize an online concert, private concert, where you can invite, obviously, friends and family to watch online. So who would be the artist or the band you want to invite for your own birthday online concert?
Ooh, now I'm going to show my age now. I'm going to pick the two bands from the 80s that I saw back in the 80s when I was a teenager. So I'm going to go for Roxette. So you've got to, obviously they're not around anymore, but and Meatloaf.
Right. Well, if
a bit
we
of
have
bat out of hell for you.
yeah, if we have viewers and listeners under the age of 30, they might be a bit perplexed about Roxette, but I highly recommend the band. I'm sure they'll know about Meatloaf. So, another question for you. You may have heard that Twitter is having some ambitions to become a bit of a radio station or have radio shows as part of their feed. So, if you were to host your own radio show, who would you invite as actors or actresses for a chat?
Oof. So many to choose from.
You're allowed two because it's a small
allowed
studio.
to. When your brain goes blank. Dame Judy Dench.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Wonderful. I worked with her as an extra on Mrs. Henderson Presents, which is a feat. And she was just so lovely. And my other one would be Sir Patrick Stewart.
Now, can you imagine if they were together with you? That would be just something, wouldn't it?
That would be a dream. Obviously, Patrick's a fellow Yorkshireman, and obviously, I love all the stuff he's done with Star Trek and the new series of Picard. And I went to a workshop of his many years ago in London. He did an actor's workshop. I just gained so much from that insight from just listening to him. And I've been to see his one-man show of The Christmas Carol. That was amazing. So yeah, he's a real hero of mine who I'd love to meet. I haven't met yet. Hopefully one day I will. I'd love to have a cup of Yorkshire tea with him and talk about his career. That would be wonderful to do. Who knows?
Do you know, nowadays, so much more is possible. I mean, you've seen what's happening online with those celebrities and so on. So, final question for you. This was prepared in advance before we actually spoke to each other, but I'm going to talk to you about Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You got a letter. They would like you to join them as the new teacher at Hogwarts. Which school are you going to go for? Are you going to go for Gryffindor? Are you going to go for Hufflepuff? Ravenclaw or Slytherin?
Oof. Well, we all know about Slytherin, and we all know about. It's got to be Gryffindor, hasn't it?
All right, then.
It's got to be Gryffindor. It's got to be done.
Listen, James, thank you so much for your time today. It's been just an absolute delight. Thank you very much for joining the Content Marketing Studio. So for all of you viewers and listeners, as you watch this on replay, please go and say hi to James Mellor. So where can people find out more about you and Rainbow Trout Films?
So obviously, feel free to send me a connection request on LinkedIn. Obviously, the website, www.rainbowtroutfilms.com. and our corporate site, northernvideocompany.com. So those are the two sites. And check out our documentary series, The In-Flight Food Trip, over on Amazon or other platforms that are available.
Thank you so much. So to all of you, thanks again for your wonderful support. Until next time, go out there, build a brand by making sure your content is better and faster. Bye for now.